Sometimes I come to public worship and I am dead inside. And my brothers and sisters encourage me to come before the Lord. And so there is that horizontal thing that you want happening in the whole of the public worship service, but certainly in the singing.
I say to prospective members of our church, when you join the church, you join the worship team.
Yeah.
When you join the church, you join the choir.
Yeah.
The people on stage, as it were, are there to accompany
That's right.
and enhance, not to perform.
Yeah.
Welcome back to The Everyday Pastor, a new podcast on the nuts and bolts of ministry from the Gospel Coalition. My name is Matt Smethurst.
And I'm Luke Duncan.
And we are here to continue our conversation from the previous episode about corporate worship, Sunday worship, how we ought to approach that, what we ought to do, what we ought not to do. And we wanted to talk even more practically this time. Last episode, we kind of laid some groundwork about the regulative principle and the difference between elements and forms/circumstances. And really just the main thing we're trying to communicate is that God sets the terms for how we worship him when we gather as his people. But let's think even more about, okay, what does that mean Sunday should look like? Should churches have a liturgy, an order of service? How should pastors think about structuring the actual gathering on Sundays, Logan?
Well, for evangelical Protestants, liturgy just means the order of service. It's not some mystical sacramental thing. The order of service is how you do the elements of worship. In what order do you do them? In what way? So, for instance, typically we pray more than once. We know we're supposed to pray in public worship.
Yeah.
In most Protestant service, typically there are three significant prayers. There's an opening prayer of adoration and invocation where you ask God to be present to bless his people, where you ask God to tune our hearts to sing his praise and to worship him and glorify him. Then usually there's a pastoral prayer, and usually there's some kind of a closing prayer in a service. Now, there are other prayers that get prayed in evangelical Protestant settings. So the question is, when do you do that, and how do you do that? That's what order of worship or liturgy does. And I do think that churches need to think about that, because candidly, in some evangelical environments, I see the order of what is done influenced very heavily by the way you would do a talk show. I have a friend who will joke and say, it's a Coldplay concert followed by a TED Talk, where you'll have a set of music and then you'll have a message. And I want guys to think more about what they're doing than to do just that.
Yeah, it's not less than that, but it's more.
Yes. And so why do we do what we do? In what order do we do?
Yeah.
Sometimes when you have a long musical set followed by a message, consciously or unconsciously, people are trying to create an emotional environment. And in that regard, I think a lot of evangelical Protestant worship has been influenced by Pentecostalism. And there's a different theology of worship and spirituality at work there. And so if you have a word derived service of worship, there ought to be some reasons that you do things in certain orders. And I've been at
not to quibble. Word derived is a fine term.
Yeah.
But even stronger, we could say word driven.
Yes.
Really,
or
that's
word
what
ordered. Yeah.
That's what you're
right.
saying throughout the service.
That's right.